Hello, my name is Kevin Baumgartner. I have a degree in information technology from Florida State University, and today I'm going to be combining my IT background with a passion for gaming and show you how to use Valve's Hammer world editing software.
Hammer is Valve's world editing software and is distributed as part of the Source Software Development Kit, or SDK. This means that you can use Hammer to create maps for any games that run on the Source engine, including Half-Life 2 and its episodes, Counter-Strike Source, Team Fortress 2, and the recently supported Left 4 Dead, which will be the focus of this tutorial, although most of the concepts will still apply to other Source games. Before we get started using Hammer, I want to cover some requirements to use the Source SDK. First, you need to own a Source engine game. The SDK is available for free to anyone who owns a Source game, and you likely want to mod a game that you own, so this shouldn't be a problem. Secondly, as far as system requirements go, if you can run a Source game well, then you will be able to run Hammer. However, in order to run Hammer well, I would recommend having at least a dual-core processor, the faster the better, and at least 2 gigs of RAM. Again, the more the better. If your video card can handle a Source game, it should be fine. Processing power and RAM are more important for Hammer. Okay, now that you know you can run Hammer, let's go ahead and install it. Go ahead and launch Steam if it's not currently running, and switch over to the Tools tab. Find the Left 4 Dead authoring tools entry in the list, and double-click it to begin downloading. The download may take several minutes depending on your connection speed. Like any other Steam update, you'll know it's ready by looking at the status indicator on the list. Once it's ready, go ahead and double-click it again to bring up a new window which has all of the SDK tools listed. The one we want is at the very top under Applications, Hammer World Editor. Go ahead and double-click it to launch Hammer. Launching Hammer takes a long time as it has to read through several massive storage files used by the Source engine, so if it looks like it's frozen for a few minutes, just wait and eventually it'll unfreeze. Once it launches, you can close the authoring tools window as well as the Steam browser if you like. When you're ready, bring up the Hammer window and go to the File, New, to open up a new map project. If the View window opens and doesn't fill the entire workspace, go ahead and maximize it. In doing this, you may notice that the 4 viewing panes aren't equally sized anymore. To fix this, go to the View menu and select Auto Size 4 Views, and they will resize to fit the new window size. If you've ever used a 3D modeling application like Maya or 3D Studio Max, the layout of Hammer should be very familiar to you. But if you haven't, we'll go over the interface a bit before we start so you know where to find the tools. On the left is your toolbar. The most commonly used tools are put here for easy access. From the top, you have the Selection tool, which looks like a mouse pointer and is used to select things in your map. The second tool is the Magnifier tool, which you can use to zoom in on 2D views. The third tool is the Camera tool, and is used again in 2D views to point the camera at what you look at in the 2D view. The fourth tool looks kind of like a light bulb, and it's the Entity tool. The Entity tool, along with the Block tool, will be the 2 main tools used to build a map. Below the Entity tool is the Block tool, and is used to create geometry in the map. The sixth tool looks like the Cube tool, but the block is colored, and it's the Face Texture tool, which is used to apply textures to specific faces of your geometry, as well as work with displacements, which are an advanced form of face editing. The next tool, which looks like a square made of bricks, is the Apply Texture tool, which will apply the currently selected texture to all faces on any blocks you have selected. Below this are the Decal and Overlay tools, which are advanced tools that can be used to spice up textures so they don't look so plain. The second to last tool is the Clipping tool, which you can use to slice up blocks into non-standard shapes if you need some special geometry. The last tool in the toolbar looks like a cube made with Tinker Toys, and it's the Vertex tool, which is used to select individual vertices of geometry objects if you need to further distort them. On the right, you have several different tool groupings. At the top is your selection setting, which you can toggle between selecting groups of items that you make, objects, and solids, which are individual pieces like a block. Below the selection group is the texture group, which is how you can select which texture you want to work with. You can narrow down textures with the filter dropdown, select recent or filtered textures with the current texture dropdown, or if you want a better look at what's available, you can hit the Browse button to open up the Texture Browser window, which gives you a bigger look at the textures, as well as some more advanced filtering options. There's also a Replace button that will allow you to blanket replace one texture with another if you decide that you want to make large changes to your map. Below the texture group is the Viz Group section, which allows you to select what you want to display in your view panes. As you can see, as you start working on a map, it will quickly fill up with a lot of wireframe geometry. By using Viz Groups, you can display or hide a particular section you are working on and clean up your viewing panes. On the very bottom of the right pane is a tool-specific group which will provide settings for various tools like the Block or Entity tools. Below the main menu bar at the top of the window is another toolbar with some more advanced buttons that you won't have to be concerned with for this tutorial. The majority of your workspace should be taken up by 4 viewing panes, which represent a 3D view of the map in the upper left, a top-down 2D view of your map in the upper right, the front-back view in the lower left, and the side view in the lower right. By clicking on the name of the view in the upper left of each pane, you can select different views to rearrange them as you please, as well as several advanced 3D view options. Go ahead and change the 3D view to be 3D textured, so you can see how your map will look with textures without having to run it in-game. For this tutorial, we will assume you're using the default view layout with the 3D texture camera view. Now that you're familiar with the interface, let's do some work. We're going to build a room. To do that, we're going to use brushes to make the floor, walls, and ceiling. Brushes are the geometric objects created using the block tool, so let's select the block tool. The block tool can be used to create several types of primitive shapes, like cubes, spheres, and cylinders. To make a room, we want to use cubes, so in the tool options in the lower right of the screen, make sure the object dropdown is set to block. In the top 2D view pane, click and drag with the mouse until you have a rectangle that's 512 by 512 units, and let go. You now have the outline of the shape you want and can increase or decrease the size by clicking and dragging on the handles if further adjustments need to be made. Once you have a 512 by 512 outline, hit enter to actually create the brush from the block tool. You may notice that the block tool snapped to the grid lines in the 2D views. By default, these grid lines are marked every 64 units. To change the size of the area marked by the grid lines, you can use the left and right square brackets to increase and decrease the size, from 1 all the way up to 512 units, and scale of powers of 2. 64 units is kind of thick for walls and floors, so let's go ahead and change the grid size down to 16 by hitting the left bracket key twice. You can verify the size change by looking at the status bar at the bottom of the window, which will tell you what the grid is currently set to in the lower right. Right now, you should still have the brush selected and are currently in the block tool. In order to resize the block, we need to return to the selection tool, which can be done by hitting the escape key. You will notice the outline of the brush will change from a solid red to a dotted red and yellow line, and now has handles on it. In the side or front 2D views, select the top middle handle under the number 512 and drag it down until the side number is 16. If you find it a little hard to control with the smaller grid lines, you can zoom in and out on any view pane by rolling your mouse wheel forward and backwards.